Let's see what Frog and Toad are up to. It looks like the tale of the lost button. Toad and Frog went for a long walk. They walked across a large meadow, and they walked in the woods, and they walked along the river. At last they went back home to Toad's house. "Oh, drat," said Toad. "Not only do my feet hurt, but I have lost one of my buttons on my jacket." "Don't worry," said Frog. "We will go back to all the places where we walked. We will soon find your button." They walked back to the large meadow, and they began to look for the button in the tall grass. "Here is your button," cried Frog. "That's not my button," said Toad. "That button is black. My button was white." Toad put the black button in his pocket. A sparrow flew down. "Excuse me," said the sparrow. "Did you lose a button? I found one." "That is not my button," said Toad. "That button has 2 holes. My button had 4 holes." Toad put the button with the 2 holes in his pocket. They went back to the woods and looked on the dark paths. "Here's your button," said Frog. "That is not my button," cried Toad. "That button is small. My button was big." Toad put the small button in his pocket. A raccoon came out from behind a tree. "Hey, I heard you were looking for a button," he said. "Here's one that I just found." "That is not my button," wailed Toad. "That button is square. My button is round." Toad put the square button in his pocket. Frog and Toad went back to the river. They looked for the button in the mud. "Here is your button," said Frog. "That is not my button," shouted Toad. "That button is thin. My button was thick." Toad put the thin button in his pocket, and he was very angry. He jumped up and down and screamed, "The whole world is covered with buttons, and not one of them is mine." Toad ran home and slammed the door. There, on the floor, he saw his white, 4-holed, big, round, thick button. "Oh," said Toad. "It was here all the time. What a lot of trouble I have made for Frog." Toad took all of the buttons out of his pocket. He took his sewing box down from the shelf, and Toad sewed the buttons all over his jacket. And the next day, Toad gave his jacket to Frog. Frog thought it was beautiful. He put it on and jumped for joy. None of the buttons fell off. Toad had sewed them on very well. How nice. This story is called A Swim. Toad and Frog went down to the river. "What a day for a swim," said Frog. "Yes," said Toad. "I will go behind these rocks and put on my bathing suit." "I don't wear a bathing suit," said Frog. "Well, I do," said Toad. "After I put on my bathing suit, you must not look at me until I get in the water." "Why not?" asked Frog. "Because I look funny in my bathing suit. That is why," said Toad. And Frog closed his eyes when Toad came out from behind the rocks. Toad was wearing his bathing suit. "Don't peek," he said. And Frog and Toad jumped into the water. They swam all afternoon, and Frog swam fast, and he made big splashes, and Toad swam slowly and made smaller splashes. The turtle came along the river bank. "Frog, tell that turtle to go away," said Toad. "I do not want him to see me in my bathing suit when I come out of the river." And Frog swam over to the turtle. "Turtle," said Frog, "you will have to go away." "Why should I?" asked the turtle. "Well, because Toad thinks that he looks funny in his bathing suit, and he does not want you to see him," said Frog. And some lizards were sitting nearby. "Hey, does the Toad really look funny in his bathing suit?" they asked. And a snake crawled out of the grass. "If Toad looks funny in his bathing suit," said the snake, "then I, for one, want to see him." "Oh, we do too. We want to see him too," said two dragonflies. "Me too," said the field mouse. "I have not seen anything funny in a long time." Frog swam back to Toad. "I am sorry, Toad," he said. "Everyone wants to see how you will look." "Then I will stay here until they go away," said Toad. The turtle and the lizards and the snake and the dragonflies and the field mouse all sat on the river bank. They waited for Toad to come out of the water. "Please," cried Frog, "please go away." But no one went away. Toad was getting colder and colder, and he was beginning to shiver and sneeze. "I will have to come out of the water," said Toad. "I am catching a cold." Toad climbed out of the river. The water dripped out of his bathing suit and down onto his feet. The turtle laughed. The lizards laughed, the snake laughed, and the field mouse laughed, and Frog laughed. "What are you laughing at, Frog?" said Toad. "I am laughing at you, Toad," said Frog, "because you do look funny in your bathing suit." "Of course I do," said Toad. Then he picked up his clothes and went home.